I never thought I'd find myself here, wearing a wedding ring and having an affair with a married woman, but that's exactly where I am now. My name is Jude. It feels like an out-of-body experience, the weight of that statement sitting like a stone in my chest. I stare at the gold ring on my finger, its shine a mockery of everything it represents. How did I even get here? It all started in a Facebook group for married couples. Funny, right? Me, a 32-year-old guy who's never even been in a relationship, offering unsolicited advice in a space for married people. It wasn't that I didn't take marriage seriously. Well, maybe I didn't. The whole thing seemed like a mess to me, this idea that someone could tie themselves to another person for life. What a trap. But hey, I had opinions. Everyone on Facebook does. And I loved getting attention for mine. So, I commented. A lot. Especially in that group. I'd make jokes about people's relationship problems, suggesting the most absurd fixes, all while barely hiding the sarcasm. But when I felt like it, I'd offer some decent advice too, just to keep up the illusion that I wasn't totally heartless. That's when I noticed her. Adelaide. She messaged me one afternoon after I posted something a little too harsh in the group. I'd called out a woman whose husband was complaining about her nagging. I mean, the guy clearly wasn't interested in having a conversation, so I made a joke about the woman finding someone who actually listens. But Adelaide didn't see the humor in it. Her message popped up in my inbox, uninvited and blunt. Are you married? I raised an eyebrow, confused. No, I replied. I'm not married. Don't even have a girlfriend. Then she came back with, that's why. What the hell did that mean? I stared at the words for a moment, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. Was I supposed to be offended? I was never one to be called out, especially not online. I asked, why are you asking? The next 3 days passed with no response, and just when I thought it was over, she came back with a message that made me freeze. Stop making fun of people's problems. It's not nice. The fact that you're not going through it yourself doesn't mean you should demean other people's stories and experiences. Be a human being who is compassionate. I swallowed hard, the guilt suddenly hitting me in a way I hadn't expected. I wanted to snap back, but something in the way she wrote it, the honesty in her words, made me pause. I wasn't used to being called out for my behavior like this. Please, what did I do wrong this time? I typed, the words feeling hollow. It wasn't that I didn't know what I'd done. It's just that I hadn't realized anyone would take offense. She sent me a long list of screenshots, each one showcasing my flippant comments under different posts, mocking people's pain. And the final message hit me hard. It's not fine to live like that. I remember reading those words and feeling a sharp pang of shame. For the first time in a long while, I wondered if maybe, just maybe, I was doing something wrong. So, I apologized. I didn't even think about it. I just did it. And I promised to tone it down, to at least be more mindful. That was the moment I became a little more aware of who I was, and maybe even a little more interested in who Adelaide was. She came back a few days later, much more casual. I didn't tell you to stop talking in the group, though. I was only drawing your attention to what you were doing. Just be a little nicer, okay? I chuckled at that. She had a way of making me feel both guilty and relieved at the same time. We started talking more regularly. She wasn't just the stern voice of reason anymore. She was someone I could joke with. We exchanged memes, laughed at stupid things, and slowly, our conversations began to move from the surface level to more personal topics. It wasn't long before I found myself looking forward to her messages, the way she made me feel understood, not just corrected. Our online bond grew, shifting from playful banter to real talk. But there was something else there now, a spark, a tension that neither of us acknowledged directly. Yet, it was undeniable. I would find myself grinning at my screen when she responded, and she'd send a winking emoji every time I made a joke that made her laugh. It felt comfortable, easy, in a way I hadn't expected from someone who'd called me out on my behavior. Still, I kept my distance. I wasn't sure where this was going, but whatever it was, I wasn't ready to admit it yet. I'd always joked about marriage being a trap, but somehow, Adelaide was making me reconsider that stance, just a little. That was when we decided to meet. I was nervous. I don't get nervous. Not usually. But as I stood outside the cafe, looking through the glass windows at the crowd inside, I could feel a knot tighten in my stomach. I wasn't sure what I expected, but seeing her face to face was different. I'd seen her pictures, sure. Adelaide, the sharp, confident woman who called me out and, against all odds, became someone I looked forward to talking to every day. But this, in the flesh, it was like seeing someone you've only read about in books. You know them, but not like this. When she finally walked through the door, I felt my breath catch. She was even more stunning than I'd imagined. Tall, taller than me, actually, and dressed in a way that made her seem both elegant and effortless. Her dark hair cascaded in soft waves around her face, framing eyes that sparkled with something mysterious, something I couldn't quite place. I stood up, not sure how to approach, but she smiled and walked toward me with ease, as though we were already familiar, as though we had met 100 times before. "Hey," she said, her voice warm, but there was a slight nervousness in it, too. She extended her hand, and I shook it, surprised by how firm her grip was. "Adelaide," I said, feeling like an idiot. "You're more beautiful in person than in the pictures." She laughed, a sound that was surprisingly light for someone who'd talked so seriously with me online. "Every picture I posted was from, like, 5 years ago," she said, shaking her head. "I've aged, you know." I raised an eyebrow, taking a seat across from her. "If this is aging, then I'm about to start a skincare regimen immediately." She chuckled again, her lips curving upward in a smile that softened the sharp lines of her face. It made me realize just how much more relaxed she seemed than I expected. We ordered food. Simple stuff, nothing fancy. As we ate, we fell into an easy conversation, the kind that felt natural, like two old friends catching up. I watched her, noticing the small details. The way her fingers traced the rim of her cup when she was thinking, how her eyes brightened when she laughed, the almost imperceptible weariness in her gaze when she was talking about something deeper. After the meal, she asked, "So, you were saying earlier about how you've never been married." I nodded, tapping my fork against the plate. "Nah. I've never really seen the point. Looks like a lot of work with very little payoff." She tilted her head, studying me. "I used to think like that, too. But then," she hesitated, her gaze dropping to the table for a moment before looking back at me, "then I met my husband." I raised an eyebrow. "Tell me about him." She let out a small sigh, almost a laugh, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. "He's older than me. 20 years older, actually." I nodded, intrigued. "And how did that happen?" "Not that the age gap matters, but that's a big one." Adelaide took a deep breath, her eyes clouding for just a moment, as if recalling a past that wasn't so easy to revisit. "At first, I wasn't even interested in him. I mean, he's a successful businessman, but the age difference. I don't know. I didn't think it would work. But he was kind to me, and kind to my family. So I thought, why not? I agreed to marry him." I watched her closely, seeing the subtle tightness in her jaw as she spoke. "But then it changed?" I asked, knowing the answer before she even said it. She nodded. "Yeah. At first, he was sweet. He was there for me, for us. But over the years, things changed. He started pulling away. He works all the time, doesn't even notice when I'm in the room. He's distant. It's like we're living in two different worlds." I felt a pang of sympathy for her, but there was something else too, a strange mixture of guilt and attraction I couldn't quite shake. I had always made fun of marriage, but hearing her talk like this, it was hard to ignore the pain behind her words. I leaned back in my chair, studying her. "That's rough," I said quietly. "I mean, I'm no expert on marriage, but it sounds like you're stuck between two worlds. Your husband, who's barely there, and—" I let my words trail off, unsure if I should push further. She looked at me for a long time before answering, her voice soft. "I'm not stuck. I'm just waiting for something. Something more than this." My heart skipped a beat. What did she mean by that? I wanted to ask, but I held myself back. The weight of the moment hung in the air, and I could feel the tension rising between us. We sat in silence for a beat too long, the conversation drifting into the background noise of the cafe. I couldn't stop staring at her. The way she carried herself, the way she opened up so easily, and yet there was something almost tragic about it. It made me want to pull her closer and tell her she didn't have to settle for this empty marriage. Ever thought about leaving? I asked before I could stop myself. I mean, if you're that unhappy, why stay? Adelaide's lips pressed into a thin line as she shook her head. It's not that simple. But sometimes, she paused, her eyes darkening as she looked at me. Sometimes, I wonder if I ever could. Her words lingered, heavy in the air. I could feel my pulse quickening as I processed what she'd said. She was looking for an escape, wasn't she? Not just from her marriage, but from everything she'd been holding in for so long. Before I could respond, she leaned in just slightly, her face close enough for me to feel the warmth of her breath. Maybe I'm just looking for something different. Something real. You know. There it was. Something real. My heart pounded in my chest, my mind racing. I couldn't deny the pull I felt toward her, the way she made me feel seen in a way I hadn't in years. But she was married. She had a husband. And yet, she was here with me, sharing parts of herself she hadn't shared with anyone else. The moment hung between us like a spark waiting to ignite, and I couldn't help but lean in just a little closer. But before I could do anything, the cafe door opened, and the moment was broken. Adelaide pulled back, her eyes wide for a split second. She glanced toward the door before quickly standing up. "I've got to go," she said, her voice a little strained. "My husband's probably looking for me." And just like that, the connection we'd built over the past few weeks felt fragile. She was slipping away from me, and I wasn't sure if I was ready to let her go. As I stood to leave, I reached out to her, my hand brushing against hers for a fleeting moment. It felt like a promise, and a warning. "See you soon," I asked, not knowing if I wanted to hear her answer. She paused, her gaze flicking to my hand, then to my face. "Yeah," she said softly, her voice barely audible. "See you soon." I watched her leave, a mix of emotions swirling in my chest. And as I turned to walk away, I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't the last time our paths would cross. The days after Adelaide left the cafe felt heavy, like I was walking through fog. I couldn't stop thinking about her. The way her hand had lingered in mine for a split second, the tension in the air between us, and the unsaid words that hung there. She wasn't like anyone I'd ever met, and the more I thought about her, the harder it became to ignore the pull I felt. We kept talking, of course. In the days that followed, our online conversations became more frequent, less guarded. It started with jokes, like always, those dry comments I'd make, the kind I used to throw out in the Facebook group just to get a laugh. But now, it wasn't just about humor. She responded with her own brand of wit, sharp and quick. And then it turned into something else. Something more personal. I'd find myself staying up late, staring at my phone, waiting for her messages. She'd tell me about her day. Small details at first, but it was enough. The way she described her empty house, her husband gone for days on business trips, her lonely mornings spent waiting for someone to acknowledge her presence. And then one night, after a long conversation about dreams, her dreams of escaping, of finding something more than what her life had become, she asked me about mine. "What about you?" she texted. "What do you want, if you could have anything?" I read her message several times, unsure of how to answer. I'd always said I wasn't into commitments, that I didn't need anyone or anything to feel fulfilled. But something about the way she asked, so vulnerable and open, made me reconsider. "I don't know," I typed back slowly. "I'm still figuring it out. I mean, I'm 32 and still pretending to have it all together. I don't think I'm supposed to be here, doing this, yet." The reply came quickly. I think that's the most honest thing anyone said to me in a long time. The words hit harder than I expected. There was an intimacy in her response, in the way she understood me without needing more. But it also left me exposed, vulnerable in a way I didn't want to be. I didn't have time to think about it, though, because a few days later, she messaged me again. "You still free tonight?" she asked. I didn't hesitate. Of course. She didn't give many details, just an address and a time. My pulse quickened when I realized where she was talking about. It was her house, the one she shared with her husband. The thought made my stomach tighten, but I didn't back out. When I walked up to her front door that evening, my heart was thudding in my chest. What was I doing? What had we become? I wasn't sure anymore, but as soon as I saw her standing there in the doorway, all those questions disappeared. She was wearing a simple black dress that hugged her figure in the most effortless way. Her hair was pulled back into a loose knot, and the way she looked at me made me feel like I was the only person in the world who mattered. "Hey," she said softly, her voice almost a whisper. "Come in." I followed her inside, trying to ignore the feeling of trespassing, of entering a space that didn't belong to me. Her house was cold, modern, too perfect, too clean. Nothing like the warmth of the cafe or the hum of our conversations online. But Adelaide didn't seem to mind the emptiness of it. She led me to the living room, where a large sofa sat in the center of the room, one I recognized from her photos, her husband's favorite spot. I sat down first, but Adelaide remained standing, staring at me for a moment as if she were trying to make sense of everything. Then, without a word, she moved toward me, her eyes searching mine. "Are we really doing this?" she asked, her voice barely above a murmur. I nodded, though I wasn't sure if I was answering her question or just trying to convince myself that this was a good idea. The tension between us was palpable, charged with an energy I couldn't explain. She sat beside me, close enough that I could feel the heat of her body, smell the faint scent of her perfume. And then she kissed me, soft at first, hesitant, but quickly deepening as she wrapped her arms around my neck. I kissed her back without thinking, without questioning the consequences. Her fingers tangled in my hair, pulling me closer, and for a moment, it felt like the world outside ceased to exist. It was just the two of us. Two people who had somehow found each other, two people who didn't know how to stop this, no matter how wrong it felt. And then, with a suddenness that took my breath away, she pulled away. She stared at me, her chest rising and falling with every breath, her face flushed. "Are you sure about this?" she asked, her voice trembling. I could see the fear in her eyes, the same fear that I felt. This was a line we couldn't uncross, a point of no return. But I couldn't stop. I couldn't stop myself from wanting her, from wanting to be the person who made her feel seen, made her feel alive. "I'm sure," I said, my voice rough. And with that, we crossed the line. The kiss deepened again, and everything else faded into the background. Her husband's favorite sofa, the one where I knew he'd sat countless times before, became the place where we gave in to something neither of us fully understood, but both of us desperately needed. Later, as we lay there, tangled in the sheets, guilt and excitement mixed in my chest. It was both a betrayal and a desperate escape. I could feel the weight of it, and yet, there was something liberating about it too. Something I couldn't explain, something that made my heart race faster than ever before. Adelaide turned to me, her expression conflicted. "I don't know what this means," she whispered, her voice barely audible. I didn't know what it meant either. But I wasn't sure I wanted to know. I wasn't prepared for the tension that hung in the air when Adelaide sent me the message that afternoon. "He's out of town again. With his mistress," it read. "Come over." I hesitated, staring at the phone for longer than I should have. The weight of it settled in, again. Another stolen moment. Another encounter where the line between right and wrong blurred just a little more. But I didn't hesitate long. By the time I arrived at her house, my heart was pounding in my chest. The driveway was empty. Her husband's car wasn't there, just like she promised. I walked up to the door and knocked. Adelaide answered almost immediately, her lips curling into a smile that reached her eyes. She looked different today. More fragile, like she was teetering on the edge of something, but still just hanging on. "Hey," she said, pulling me inside, her voice barely above a whisper. The air was heavy with something unspoken. "What's the plan?" I asked, trying to keep things light. She shook her head, a small laugh escaping her lips. "Nothing special. Just us." She led me to the living room, the same spot where everything had started. The same place where the air between us had felt charged, full of hidden promises. I barely had time to sit down before I heard the unmistakable sound of a car pulling into the driveway. My stomach dropped. "Shit," I muttered under my breath. Adelaide froze, her eyes wide. "It's him." The door creaked open. Her husband was home early. The one person in the world I was trying desperately to avoid. I stood, every instinct telling me to run, but I stayed rooted to the spot. Adelaide's gaze locked onto mine, calm and collected. The kind of calm that made my skin crawl. "Just stay quiet," she whispered, moving toward the kitchen with a deliberate slowness, like she had done this dance 1,000 times. I wanted to follow her, to get out of the line of sight. But I couldn't. My feet wouldn't move. Instead, I sank back into the couch, trying to act as normal as possible, even as my heart raced in my chest. Her husband, a tall, older man with graying hair, walked in through the door without so much as a glance in our direction. He didn't acknowledge her, not even a nod. Adelaide stood in the kitchen doorway, watching him. "Hey," she said softly. He didn't answer. He didn't even turn to face her. His movements were slow, mechanical, like he was on autopilot. "Dinner's on the table," she added, her voice barely a murmur. His eyes flicked toward her, but there was no warmth in them. No recognition. He walked straight past her without another word, heading toward the stairs. Adelaide didn't flinch. Her face remained expressionless, but I could see the tension in her shoulders. I couldn't breathe. When her husband disappeared upstairs, Adelaide let out a breath I hadn't realized she'd been holding. The moment of terror had passed, but the weight of it lingered in the room. She slowly walked back into the living room, her posture sagging with something heavier than exhaustion. She collapsed onto the couch next to me, not even bothering to sit up straight. Her eyes were distant, her lips pressed tightly together, as if she were holding something back. "Why does he do that?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She turned her gaze to me, those brown eyes sharp with something cold, something that hadn't been there before. "Because he doesn't care." Her voice cracked, but she quickly recovered. "He never cared." I felt the truth of her words like a slap to the face. "He didn't even say your name," I murmured. Her eyes fluttered shut for a second, her fingers curling into fists. "He's forgotten my name," she said, her voice thick with bitterness. "I'm just a shadow to him. I'm invisible." The words hit me harder than I expected. I had seen her, had felt that connection from the very first moment, but this was something deeper. This wasn't just about the affair. This was about more than just stolen moments in a cold, empty house. This was about a woman who had been erased, a woman who wanted to feel seen. I reached out instinctively, brushing my hand against hers. The touch was hesitant at first, but when she didn't pull away, I let my fingers linger. "I see you," I said softly, meaning every word. Her eyes flickered to mine, and for the first time, I saw her vulnerability, her raw need for something, anything, to make her feel real again. The silence stretched between us, thick with everything we weren't saying. "You're the only one who sees me," she said quietly. "You're the only one who calls me by my name." She let out a bitter laugh. "It's not just about this. It's not just about the sex. I need someone who will notice me. Someone who will fight for me. Someone who will give a damn." The weight of her words pressed down on me, and for the first time, I understood the gravity of what we were doing. This wasn't just a game anymore. She wasn't just looking for an escape, she was looking for validation. She was looking for freedom, a way out from the life she had settled into but never truly wanted. "I'll fight for you," I said, before I could stop myself. Her gaze softened, but the sadness never left her eyes. "I don't want you to fight for me," she said quietly, shaking her head. "I want to fight for myself." I froze, my heart hammering in my chest. This was it. The moment where everything we'd been circling around, the unspoken feelings, the tension, all of it came to a head. I had thought this affair was about the thrill of being hidden, about the secretive allure of what we couldn't have. But now, I wasn't so sure. Adelaide wasn't just looking for a way out of her marriage. She was looking for a way back to herself. But as she stood to walk away, something shifted between us. The gravity of her words had changed everything. Before I could speak, she turned back to me. "I'm leaving him," she said, her voice steady. "I don't know when, but I will." And then she walked away, leaving me there, caught between the excitement of her promise and the fear of what that meant for both of us. The days stretch on, each one more drawn out than the last. I keep replaying that moment in my mind, the one where Adelaide stood there, so certain of her decision to leave him, but still holding back. It's almost as if she's telling me what I want to hear, but at the same time, I know better. She's stuck, caught between the life she built with her husband and the future she wants with me. And I'm stuck, too. In her orbit, waiting. I glanced down at my hand, absent-mindedly running my fingers over the cool metal of the wedding ring. I never thought I'd find myself in this situation, wearing a ring I never earned, carrying a burden I never imagined. Every day I hope that one day, she'll gather the courage to leave him. But I don't tell her this. I don't share the quiet wish that sometimes keeps me up at night. That she'll look at me one day and say the words I'm longing to hear, "I'm ready to walk away." But for now, the affair continues in the shadows, wrapped up in secrecy. It's not ideal. It's not what either of us deserve. Yet, somehow, it's what we both cling to. I wear the ring as a silent reminder of the life Adelaide could have if she chooses me, and of the life she's still bound to if she stays. A part of me wonders if she even notices it when I'm with her. If she sees the way it gleams on my finger, heavy with unspoken meaning. She's never mentioned it, never asked about it. Maybe it's a small act of defiance. Or maybe it's just my way of holding on to something that might never come to be. I can't stop myself from thinking of her words, how she told me she would leave him. I want to believe her. I want to believe that she will find the strength to do it, to break free from the life that suffocates her. But deep down, I wonder how much of that is just talk. How much is wishful thinking? Adelaide deserves more. She deserves someone who will love her openly, without secrets, without lies. Someone who will hold her hand in public, someone who will stand by her side and tell the world, "This is my woman." But right now, I'm the one who's here, waiting. Waiting for the moment she decides she's done. Waiting for her to look at me, and finally choose us. I sit back against the couch, the weight of the thoughts pressing down on me. I've never been the type to wait for anyone. I've always been the one to move on, to let things go when they don't serve me. But this is different. Adelaide is different. What if she never leaves him? What if she stays trapped in that miserable marriage, never having the courage to break free? What if I'm stuck here, waiting for a future that will never come? The truth is, I don't know. I don't know what the future holds. But as I sit here, I can't help but hold on to the small spark of hope that one day, she'll make the choice that will change everything. She'll find her freedom, and maybe, just maybe, she'll find me waiting for her. I close my eyes for a moment, allowing myself to imagine it, us, together. No secrets, no lies. A future that doesn't feel like a stolen moment, but something real, something solid. But as quickly as the thought comes, it vanishes. Reality crashes in. We're still in this limbo, and I can't shake the feeling that we're running out of time. I stand up, pacing across the room, trying to shake off the heaviness. Maybe this will be a never-ending cycle. Maybe I'll always be here, in this quiet limbo, waiting for her to make up her mind. But no matter how much doubt gnaws at me, one thing remains true. I'm not giving up on her. I can't. What would you do in my shoes? I ask, my voice low and serious. Would you wait for the woman you love, even if she's married? Or would you walk away? I'm not sure what the future holds, but I know I'll be here when she's ready to make the choice that will change both our lives. Maybe I'm a fool for waiting, but I've never felt more certain about anything in my life.